20 years. 2 decades dedicated to Thompson and Wright. More time than many marriages last. And in just 90 seconds, I discovered that to James Edwards, my boss, I was nothing more than a useless person. Ryan's email came in at 7:43 p.m. I was still at the office as usual. "Sarah, you need to see this. I'm sorry." In attached video. Footage of the meeting room. James wildly gesturing at William, our CFO. "Sarah, you've been here way too long. You've gotten too comfortable, useless. We're replacing you next month with someone younger, with fresh ideas and a lower salary." William laughed. "She really thinks she's indispensable. 20 years of loyalty, and she never realized she's just another replaceable cog." My hands were shaking. Coffee spilled all over important documents. I didn't care. Ryan appeared in the doorway. I forgot my phone charging in the room. I recorded it when I realized who they were talking about. I wiped away tears I hadn't even noticed were streaming. "Thanks, Ryan." "What are you going to do? Confront him?" I looked at the picture on my desk. Me, receiving the Employee of the Year award. James beside me smiling, pretending to be proud. An idea started forming. "No, Ryan, I'm going to do something much better. Subscribe to the channel and hit like for more stories like this." That night I couldn't sleep. My first impulse was to draft an angry resignation letter, then sue the company for defamation, and finally, just shout at James until I lost my voice. But I took a deep breath. They were expecting an emotional reaction, so I decided to do something completely unexpected. The next morning I arrived on time. I smiled at the receptionist, greeted colleagues by their names, made my usual coffee. When James walked by, I raised my cup in greeting. "Good morning. I'm finishing up the presentation for the Anderson client. Need anything?" His expression, momentary. Confusion, then that condescending smile, said it all. In his world, I was just an employee, oblivious to my own fate. "Everything's fine, Sarah. Keep up the good work." In that moment, my decision was crystal clear. James Edwards didn't deserve my explosive anger. He deserved something much more refined. A meticulously calculated and patient act of revenge. During lunch, I sat alone in the park and mentally mapped out each step. I had 4 weeks. 4 weeks to turn 20 years of accumulated knowledge into power. To convert relationships into alliances. To prepare my exit and his downfall simultaneously. I analyzed every important client, every pending project, every piece of insider information I had. I remembered James's comments about replacing you with someone younger and realized he had no idea about everything I really did for the company. I went back to the office with a calm I'd never felt before. Ryan looked at me nervously from his cubicle. I sent him a reassuring message. "Everything's fine, just keep acting normally." The following weeks demanded the best performance of my life. I arrived early, left late, I organized files, finalized reports, solved problems on colleagues' projects. The exemplary employee I'd always been. Behind the scenes, my preparation advanced systematically. Week 1, I documented all the processes that only I mastered. I discreetly updated my resume and professional profile. I researched our main competitor, Blackwell & Associates, identifying how they might benefit from my experience. "Sarah, you seem so pumped lately," commented Jessica from HR. Ironically, the same person who was probably already preparing my termination papers. "Just focused on the results," I replied with a smile. Week 2, I had dinner separately with 3 key clients, including Robert Anderson. Casual conversations about the future of strategic consulting. I mentioned potential changes in my career. "You're the heart of Thompson and Wright, Sarah," said Robert. "If you leave, let me know first." "Why?" I asked, feigning surprise. "Because you're the one who really understands our needs. James just shows up for handshakes and photos." Week 3, I subtly transferred important contacts to my personal email. I set up a discreet meeting with Christopher Bennett, CEO of Blackwell & Associates. "Your reputation is impressive," he said. "What would you do if you had the freedom to lead?" I explained exactly how I would transform their consulting department. His eyebrows gradually lifted as I spoke. We've got a vacancy available whenever you want," he concluded. Week 4, I meticulously finalized every pending project. I created detailed spreadsheets for the transition. I gradually cleared my desk, taking personal items discreetly each day. Ryan noticed. "You're gearing up for something big, aren't you?" "Just organizing my life," I replied. "And you should update your resume too." The email arrived exactly as I predicted. A summons to the conference room at 4:30 p.m. on Friday. Signed by James and Jessica from HR, Classic. A weekend to process the news. I adjusted my blazer and touched up my lipstick. I wanted to be impeccable for this moment. Not out of vanity, but because I knew this scene would be etched in their memories. The room was set up like an impromptu courtroom. James sat at the head of the table, Jessica by his side, with a folder I imagined contained my severance agreement. William watched from a corner, probably to make sure there was no emotional outburst. "Sarah, thanks for coming," began James, in his formal, rehearsed tone. "This isn't an easy conversation. Actually, can we skip the small talk?" I interrupted gently. "I'm being fired, right?" The three exchanged surprised looks. This wasn't the script they expected. James cleared his throat. "Yes. After much consideration, we've decided the company needs to take a new strategic direction. Your position is being restructured," I finished. "I understand perfectly." Jessica handed me the documents, clearly relieved by my calm. "Your severance package includes 3 months' salary and an extension of your health plan." I examined the papers carefully, signing each page with composure. I could feel their tension melting away into confusion. "I have to admit," said William, "we expected a different reaction." I smiled. 20 years taught me that change is inevitable in business. James looked almost disappointed. "Well, we're grateful for your understanding and for all your service to Thompson and Wright." I stood up and extended my hand. "It was a pleasure. I wish you all the best." As I closed the door behind me, I heard William whisper, "That was strangely easy." Little did they know that this wasn't an ending. It was just the first act. I walked past my old workspace, now partially emptied. Ryan looked at me, eyes wide. I nodded discreetly, confirming what he already suspected. On my computer, still logged in for the last time, I quickly drafted an email to Robert Anderson. No drama, no accusations, just precise information. "Dear Robert, I wanted to personally let you know that today was my last day at Thompson and Wright. It has been a privilege working with you over the past 12 years. I'll be available as an independent consultant starting next week should you need support during the transition or on any future projects. My personal contact is below. Sincerely, Sarah." I clicked send. The first domino had fallen. In the elevator, I removed my badge. 20 years crammed onto that little plastic rectangle. I handed it to the security guard with a smile. "Last one, Gary." He frowned. "Are you on vacation, Miss Sarah?" "Something like that," I replied. My phone buzzed before I even reached the parking lot. It was Robert Anderson. "I just got your email. Fired? Impossible. We need to talk immediately." "Dinner tonight?" I confirmed. I got into the car and adjusted the rearview mirror. The woman reflected back looked different, lighter, more determined. While driving home, I imagined James toasting with William, celebrating how easily I left, their apparent victory. Little did they know I had just lit the fuse that would cause everything they valued to explode. Dinner with Robert Anderson didn't take place at the fancy restaurant that Thompson and Wright used for its corporate events. We chose a discreet spot where executives closed deals away from prying eyes. I can't believe James was that stupid, Robert said, shaking his head as he looked over the menu. "You were the only reason we kept the contract with them." I don't think he ever realized that. People tend to value what's visible, Robert. James was always in the presentations, at events, in photos. I was the one working behind the scenes, making sure everything went smoothly. Well, now the problem is his. Robert set the menu aside. "Our quarterly contract review is scheduled for Monday. I've already made my decision." I took a sip of wine and gave a small smile. "I'm not asking you to take any action on my behalf." "Not at all. I'm doing it for my company. We pay for competence, not for empty charm and promises that can't be kept without you. On Monday, exactly at 9:17 a.m., I received a message from Ryan. Total chaos. Anderson canceled the contract. James is locked in a room with the finance department. I've never seen William look so pale. I pictured the scene. James struggling to understand how he lost the company's biggest client just 3 days after I left. William frantically calculating the impact on cash flow. The connection still hadn't been made. At noon, my phone rang. An unknown number. Sarah speaking. Sarah, this is Jessica from HR. Her voice trembled slightly. I know. You just left, but there's a situation. James would like to know if you're available for temporary consulting, specifically for the Anderson client. How interesting, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. What happened? There was a miscommunication. Mr. Anderson expressed some concerns. I understand. Unfortunately, my schedule is already full. A tense pause. Could we discuss a special compensation? It's not about compensation, Jessica. It's about commitments already made. Please, reconsider. James is... She lowered her voice. He's really desperate. Tell James I wish the company success. On Wednesday, the second domino fell. Apex Technologies, our third largest client, also terminated their contract. Not by chance. It was an account I'd personally nurtured over 8 years. Ryan reported that the finance department was in permanent crisis. Rumors of immediate cuts began circulating among the younger employees. The atmosphere in the office, according to him, was like that of a sinking ship. On Thursday, Meridian Group, our fifth largest client, also ended its business relationship. I got a call from William. No beating around the bush. What's going on, Sarah? I don't know what you mean, William. I'm just taking care of my life after being fired. 3 major clients gone in 1 week is no coincidence. The market is unpredictable. Sarah, be reasonable. The company you helped build is in danger. I let silence hang for a few seconds. Funny you mention that now, William. 2 weeks ago you agreed that I was, what did you say? A replaceable cog. The line went silent. You heard that conversation, and I saw the video. Several times, actually. Sarah, have a great day, William. I have an important meeting now. On Friday, 1 week after I left, Thomson & Wright called an emergency board meeting. Their shares had dropped 17% in 5 days on the trading floor. Ryan sent me a sneaky photo of the company's parking lot. James's spot was empty. He didn't show up today. They say he's sick. I smiled at my phone. This week was only the beginning, Ryan. Keep your resume updated. That night, I visited a small cafe near my apartment. In the corner, a man in an impeccable suit was waiting. Christopher, I greeted the CEO of Blackwell & Associates. I'm ready to discuss that proposal now. The Blackwell & Associates office occupied the 20th floor of a modern building in the financial district. Huge glass windows offered a great view of the city. From my new spot, I could see the Thomson & Wright building 3 blocks away. This will be your space, Christopher explained, showing me a spacious corner office. Director of Strategic Consulting, 15 people reporting directly to you. Full autonomy to implement your methods. When do we start? Yesterday. He smiled. Actually, we've already announced your hiring to our major clients. The reactions were enthusiastic. My official first day at Blackwell was scheduled strategically 2 weeks after my departure from Thomson & Wright. Just enough time for the news to spread in the industry, but not so long that the moment was lost. On my very first morning, I received a list of potential clients interested in moving their business to Blackwell, specifically to work with me. I recognized several names from my old company's portfolio. Looks like you have admirers, commented Melissa, my new assistant. Relationships built over years, I replied. People do business with people, not companies. I spent my first month structuring my department. I implemented systems I'd always wanted at Thomson & Wright, but that James considered unnecessary. I brought together a diverse, talented team, including 2 ex-colleagues who quit when they saw the inevitable decline of our old company. At the end of the month, I received a comparative report. Blackwell had absorbed 43% of the clients that left Thompson and Wright in recent weeks. The financial impact was significant on both sides, substantial growth for us and a hemorrhage for them. After a board meeting, Christopher approached me. "The numbers are extraordinary, Sarah. The board is impressed. We're just getting started." "There's one thing that intrigues me," he said in a lowered voice. "The precision with which you pinpointed the vulnerabilities of the migrating clients, as if you knew exactly what they were missing." I smiled. 20 years of watching the same people teaches you to recognize patterns and unmet needs. And James? Edwards never noticed that. James only saw the obvious. I saw what was invisible. In the 6th week at Blackwell, I scheduled a presentation for Global Tech, a client Thompson and Wright had chased for years without success. I researched their needs extensively and prepared a personalized proposal addressing points I knew James had consistently overlooked. "Impressive," the Global Tech CEO commented after my presentation. No one had connected those dots before. "Maybe they were just looking at the problem the wrong way," I replied. We signed the contract that very day. A client Thompson and Wright had never captured, sealed on my first try at Blackwell. That night I received a message from Ryan. "Thompson is considering a complete restructuring. Massive layoffs expected next month. James rarely shows up at the office now." He attached a photo of the old lobby, once vibrant, now dimmed with half the lights off, to save energy, according to an internal memo. Christopher invited me for a drink after work to celebrate the Global Tech win. "You've built quite the reputation in just a few weeks," he said. "People in the market are talking. They say you're redefining the game. I'm just putting into practice what I've always known." And Thompson and Wright, I looked out the bar window at the partially darkened building of my old company. Every company chooses what to value, Christopher. They decided to bet on image and flattery. We bet on competence and genuine relationships. You know what I admire most about you, Sarah. Your ability to turn personal revenge into a brilliant business strategy. I raised my glass. The best revenge isn't just about succeeding. It's making your success the direct cause of their failure. 3 months after my hiring at Blackwell, the inevitable happened. The news first leaked through unofficial channels, then was confirmed by business newspapers. Thompson and Wright announces massive restructuring after record client losses. The report detailed how the company had lost 60% of its strategic client portfolio in less than a quarter, causing a 43% drop in market value. The board held an emergency meeting to discuss the future of leadership. Ryan sent me a voice message. "It's a war zone here. William is openly blaming James for negligence in managing key talent. James is pointing fingers at finance for not alerting us about the over-reliance on personal client relationships. And the best part? Everyone knows the real reason has a name, but no one dares say it out loud." The next day, the official news came out. James Edwards steps down as president of Thompson and Wright following disastrous results. The corporate statement, filled with euphemisms, mentioned he was seeking new challenges and thanked him for his 15 years of contributions. The most influential economic paper ran a blunt analysis. Edwards' exit was clearly a disguised firing. Internal sources confirmed the board was furious about his inability to reverse the client exodus, many of whom moved to competitor Blackwell and Associates, coinciding with the hiring of Sarah Mitchell, former senior director at Thompson, and Wright, fired by Edwards 3 months ago. A costly lesson on the importance of human capital in consulting. Christopher left the article on my desk. "Looks like someone learned a valuable lesson." "The most expensive lessons are usually the most memorable," I replied. That afternoon, I received an unexpected message. An unknown number, but the tone was unmistakable. "Can we talk?" "JE," I ignored it. 3 hours later, another came. "Sarah, please, we need to clear a few things up." I blocked the number. A week later, William resigned as well. Thompson and Wright announced a 40% reduction in staff. The once imposing building now occupied only 4 of its original 8 floors. Ryan sent me a photo, the golden plaque with James's name being removed from his office. End of an era. Thanks for the tip. To keep your resume updated. I got 3 offers. This week. Take the Meridian Group one, I replied. Their director is a friend of mine. I mentioned your name. 2 weeks after James's official departure, the newspapers ran a small note. Ex-CEO of Thompson & Wright puts mansion up for sale amid speculation of financial troubles. Attached was a photo of the luxurious property James loved to flaunt on social media. During a quarterly meeting at Blackwell, Christopher presented the results. 78% gross in the client portfolio, 62% revenue increase. On the screen, a graph with 2 lines showed the meteoric rise of Blackwell versus the sharp decline of Thompson & Wright. Much of this success, he said, pointing at me, is thanks to our new director, who not only brought unmatched expertise but also a strategic vision that transformed our market approach. Applause filled the room. I smiled and quietly expressed my thanks. That night, as I left the office, I noticed a man waiting by my car. Despite his unshaven face and dark circles, I recognized him immediately. It was James Edwards. The figure of James in the parking lot was a shadow of the confident executive I'd known for so long. The expensive suit now replaced by a rumpled shirt, his Italian shoes swapped for a worn pair. His eyes, once arrogant, now avoided direct contact. "Sarah," he said, his voice rough and tired. "How did you find out where I work?" I asked, keeping a safe distance. A bitter laugh. "The whole market knows where you work. Your name comes up in every discussion about the rise of Blackwell." "What do you want, James?" "I'm busy." He ran a hand through his now clearly graying hair. I came to understand. "How did you do it? How did you dismantle everything so methodically?" "Dismantle? Interesting choice of words." I unlocked my car with the remote. "I didn't dismantle anything. I just left one company and joined another. The rest happened naturally." "Naturally?" His voice rose. 60% of our clients left in 3 months. My reputation is ruined. No one returns my calls. I had to sell my house. My marriage is... "That's not my problem, James." He stepped forward. "You planned this, didn't you? From the moment you left. Maybe even before." I kept my expression neutral. "Like you once said, I'm just a replaceable cog. How could I, someone you deemed useless, orchestrate something so complex?" His face paled. "You heard that conversation?" "I saw the video. Several times, actually. It was very enlightening." James closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, there was something different. No anger, but a kind of belated understanding. "That's why you accepted your dismissal so calmly. You already had everything planned. Let's just say I learned the importance of strategic planning during my 20 years at the company." "Sarah, He hesitated. "What you said in that video was stupid. A moment of arrogance. It didn't reflect what you really thought of me." "Really?" I raised an eyebrow. "Then why did you fire me?" "Pressure from the board. Budget cuts. William insisted that we needed fresh blood. And you, as a leader, naturally gave in." Silence. "What exactly do you want, James?" "An apology isn't going to bring your clients back." He took a deep breath. "I need a job, Sarah. Anything. A consultant, an analyst, it doesn't matter. My reputation is shot. No one in this industry will hire me. But you have influence at Blackwell now." The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who let me go after 20 years of loyal service was now begging for my help. "You want me to use my influence to get a job for the man who fired me after 20 years of service?" I know how that sounds, but I'm desperate. I have bills to pay, responsibilities. I studied him for a moment. Part of me wanted to savor this moment, to prolong his humiliation. But another part recognized something sad in this defeated man. "James, I'll be straight with you. I'm not going to help you get a job." His gaze dropped. "Not because I want to see you suffer, but because you really haven't learned what happened." "What do you mean?" "You don't need a job. You need a lesson." "What lesson?" he asked, exasperated. "That people aren't replaceable cogs. That genuine relationships are a business's true capital. That arrogance and disdain have consequences. And you think I haven't learned that the hard way?" "No," I replied as I opened the car door. "I think you learned you made a mistake by underestimating me. It's not the same thing." "Sarah, please." "Thompson and Wright still exists, James. Reduced but functional. Start over. Rebuild. But this time, recognize the real value of the people around you." I got in my car and closed the door, and Through the window, I saw his lips form inaudible words, perhaps pleas or accusations. I started the engine and drove off, leaving him behind in a parking lot that grew smaller in my rearview mirror. A chapter closed for good. Subscribe to the channel and hit like for more stories like this. 6 months passed since my encounter with James in the parking lot. Blackwell & Associates had established itself as a leader in the field, surpassing not only Thompson and Wright, but also long-established competitors. Much of this transformation was credited to the Sarah Mitchell effect, as the trade press began calling it. In my new office, now larger and with a prime view of the city skyline, a discreet plaque sat on my desk. Chief Executive Officer of Strategic Operations. Christopher had created the role specifically to recognize my contribution and expand my authority. "The investors' meeting is confirmed for Thursday," said Melissa, my assistant. "They're especially interested in your vision for the company's international expansion." "Thank you. Get me a comparative report of the last 3 quarters to set the context for our proposal." When it was just the 2 of us, Melissa hesitated at the door. "Do you have a minute for a personal question?" "Sure. Is it true what they say? That you orchestrated the downfall of Thompson and Wright as revenge for being fired?" I smiled. "Markets are complex, Melissa. Companies rise and fall for countless reasons. But the timing was..." She searched for the right word. "Just too perfect to be a coincidence. Let's just say I saw an opportunity and took full advantage of it." She nodded, admiration shining in her eyes. "That's why half the women here consider you their unofficial mentor. You turned what could have been just personal injustice into a case study in professional empowerment." After Melissa left, I took a moment to reflect. Framed on the wall was the cover of a leading business magazine. From Firing to Ruling, How Sarah Mitchell Revolutionized the Consulting Market. The headline was, of course, exaggerated, but it captured the essence of the transformation. My phone rang. It was Ryan, now a manager at Meridian Group. "Did you see the news? Thompson and Wright was acquired by Horizon Capital. They're keeping the brand, but essentially breaking the company apart." "It was inevitable," I replied. "The share prices dropped too much for them to remain independent. William is completely out." "James?" Ryan hesitated. "What about him?" "He's working as an independent consultant, taking on small projects. I heard he's even giving lectures on leadership failures at business schools." I smiled at the irony. Maybe he finally learned something after all. "You never explained exactly how you made it happen, Sarah. Sometimes I wonder if it was pure luck or the smartest plan I've ever seen. Life is rarely that simple, Ryan. Let's say it was a mix of preparation and opportunity." After hanging up, I opened a specific drawer at my desk. Inside was the flash drive with the video that had changed everything. James calling me useless, planning my firing. I no longer watched it. I didn't need to. At the end of the day, I went up to the building's terrace. The sunset cast a golden glow over the city, illuminating both the modern Blackwell building and the now partially empty Thompson and Wright building. Christopher joined me with a glass of champagne. "Celebrating something in particular?" I asked. "The board unanimously approved your promotion. Starting next month, you will officially be Vice President Executive at Blackwell & Associates." I raised my glass. "To evolution, to poetic justice," he corrected with a knowing smile. As we watched the horizon, I reflected on the journey of the past few months. It wasn't just about revenge, even though that element was undeniably there. It was about setting things right, about the corporate world finding its natural balance when true merit and value are finally recognized. "You know what's most satisfying, Christopher?" "What's that?" "Not having to destroy anything, just building something better." The next day, as I stepped into the elevator, a young newly hired analyst looked at me with barely concealed admiration. "Miss Mitchell, I hope I'm not being intrusive, But I read your story and it's inspiring. Could you give me some advice for someone starting out? I smiled, remembering my own early days. Build genuine relationships. Develop skills that no one can easily replicate. And remember, your worth isn't defined by your title or how others see you, but by the real impact you create. As the elevator doors opened on my floor, I added, and never ever underestimate the power of a patient strategy. I walked down the hallway where a diverse, talented team worked enthusiastically, a team I had carefully chosen, valuing both competence and character, an organizational culture built on mutual respect and genuine recognition. This was my true triumph, not the downfall of James or the collapse of Thompson and Wright, but the creation of something better, stronger, and more humane. Revenge might have been the catalyst, but the legacy would be much greater than that. Subscribe to the channel and hit like for more stories like this.